Hello, friends. Today we're diving into a topic that many of us have encountered but rarely feel prepared to handle: how to respond when someone you care about ignores you. This isn't about letting our egos take over or reacting out of bitterness. It's about harnessing the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy to face these situations with grace, self-respect, and unwavering confidence. Instead of being thrown off balance by someone else's behavior, we'll learn how to stay centered, focus on our personal growth, and maintain our peace of mind. The Stoics, such as the great philosopher Epictetus, believed that the only thing we truly control is our own response to what happens around us. It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our beliefs about those events. In today's exploration, we're going to focus on what we can control: our thoughts, actions, and emotions, and how this mindset can transform the way we handle rejection or indifference. When someone ignores us, it often triggers feelings of hurt, rejection, and even anger. But today we're going to look beyond these initial reactions. We'll learn practical strategies inspired by Stoic wisdom that help us manage our emotions and avoid the pitfall of seeking external validation. Instead, we'll focus on becoming the best version of ourselves, independent of how others perceive us. Whether you're new to Stoicism or already familiar with its teachings, I promise to guide you through these profound yet simple lessons using relatable, modern examples. Together, we'll learn how to apply ancient wisdom to contemporary challenges, like dealing with someone who doesn't seem interested in you. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." So sit back, keep an open mind, and let's explore how Stoicism can help us grow stronger, more resilient, and more at peace, even in the face of life's uncertainties. Chapter 1. Cultivating Emotional Mastery. Our journey begins by looking inward because the path to composure lies in mastering our mind and emotions. The Stoics were pioneers in developing emotional discipline and rational thinking. Marcus Aurelius once declared, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When someone ignores you, it often triggers feelings of hurt, anger, and insecurity. But according to Stoicism, these emotions originate not from the actions of others, but from our judgments about those actions. Imagine you're out with friends, and you see someone attractive across the room. You decide to introduce yourself, only to be met with complete indifference. She turns away without a word, and suddenly, you feel embarrassed and rejected. But what has really happened here? The objective reality is that this person, a total stranger, declined your approach. The hurtful emotions, however, stem from the story you tell yourself about why she ignored you. You might think that you're unattractive or that you're a failure, but in reality, her ignoring you likely has nothing to do with your worth. Maybe she was already in a relationship, or she just had a bad day. The reasons are endless, and most have nothing to do with you. The key is to pause and reassess. What would the Stoics do? They would remind us that our emotions are the result of our interpretations, not the facts themselves. Breathe deeply and observe your thoughts impartially. Ask yourself what is truly happening without assigning extra meaning to it. In other words, separate the facts from your feelings. Let me share a personal example. Once, during a big work presentation, I made an offhand joke to lighten the mood. No one laughed. Instead, there were some awkward glances. My first thought was to feel embarrassed and even question my own capabilities. But then I paused, just like a Stoic would. I reminded myself that this one moment didn't define my skills or my value as a person. I moved forward with my presentation confidently, and in the end, it turned out well because I didn't let that one moment dictate the rest of my performance. It's this kind of emotional resilience that Stoicism encourages us to develop. The more we practice detaching ourselves from knee-jerk emotional reactions, the more we strengthen our inner peace. Just like training a muscle, it's something we work on over time. The next time you find yourself facing indifference, remember, you cannot control others, but you can control how you respond. Choose to maintain your inner calm rather than being swept away by a storm of emotions. You'll find that this kind of composure is an invaluable strength in both social and personal situations. Chapter 2. Embracing Inner Self-Worth. At the core of Stoic philosophy is the steadfast belief in inherent self-worth. As Marcus Aurelius boldly stated, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. In our modern world, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking validation from others, especially in romantic contexts. We want others to validate us, to show us that we are desirable, lovable, and enough. But the Stoics knew that genuine self-esteem can only be found within. Imagine this scenario. You muster the courage to approach someone you find attractive at a party. You feel a connection, but then her friends arrive, and suddenly she changes. She becomes distant and perhaps even dismissive. It's easy to take this behavior personally, to think that something is wrong with you. But the Stoics would encourage us to pause and reflect. Has anything about who you are objectively changed in those few moments? Her behavior is simply a reflection of her current state, not a judgment of your worth. When we place our self-worth in the hands of others, we become vulnerable to hurt and suffering. Epictetus taught that we must focus on what is in our power and accept the rest as it happens. A person's interest in you, or lack thereof, is beyond your rational control, so it should never determine your sense of self-worth. Instead, reflect on your virtues, talents, and strengths. Write down your positive traits and accomplishments. Reinforce this foundation of inner value so that when someone ignores you, it's like rain falling off a sturdy oak tree. Their behavior cannot touch what is deeply rooted within. Consider this. I once had a friend who put so much weight on whether or not people liked her that it almost seemed to consume her. Every social interaction was a test of her worth. One day, after someone she admired ignored her in a conversation, she spiraled into thinking she wasn't interesting enough. It was painful to watch. What helped her begin to change was adopting a Stoic mindset. She started journaling about her strengths, things that were true regardless of external opinions. Slowly, she began to shift her focus from external validation to internal validation, which gave her a resilient sense of peace. Remember, your self-worth must come from within. People will come and go, opinions will rise and fall, but your inherent value remains constant. Do not place anyone on a pedestal. Do not make them the arbiter of your worth. Embrace the truth that your value comes from your virtues, your actions, and your capacity for growth. Chapter 3. Reclaiming your personal power. The Stoics believe that no one is inherently superior or inferior to you. This doesn't mean looking down on others. It simply means refusing to see yourself as beneath anyone. Imagine you're at a networking event and you finally work up the nerve to chat with someone who you think is out of your league. They dismiss you in a condescending manner. It's easy to feel small, to think that somehow you aren't good enough. But ask yourself, whose metric of leagues are you accepting? The Stoics remind us that these social distinctions, whether someone is out of our league, are illusions. They don't actually change who you are or your value as a person. The next time you feel that someone is above you, remember, your worth is determined by your virtues, not by how others choose to view you. Chapter 4. Leading with grace and composure. Closely tied to cultivating a mindset of self-sovereignty is showing respect and confidence, even in the face of disregard from others. Marcus Aurelius wisely stated, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." When someone ignores or dismisses you, the instinct might be to retaliate or show disdain in return. But this reaction only diminishes you. The Stoics understood that how we respond to perceived slights says more about our character than about the person who wronged us. Instead of reacting negatively, maintain your composure. Treat the other person with the same respect you wish to receive. This not only demonstrates strength, but also sets an example of how a person with dignity behaves. Imagine you're out at an event and you try to strike up a conversation with someone, but they brush you off. Most people's egos would be stung, and they might feel tempted to respond with a rude comment or walk away in an offended huff. But think about what you gain by reacting that way. The Stoic response would be to stay calm and respectful, even if the other person isn't. This demonstrates true confidence. Confidence that isn't dependent on how others treat you. A personal story. I once attended a networking event where I was excited to meet a particular person in my industry. When I approached them, they seemed uninterested and dismissive. Initially, I felt embarrassed, but I remembered the Stoic teachings. I kept my composure, thanked them for their time, and moved on to enjoy the rest of the event. Later that evening, someone who had observed the interaction approached me and commended me for how gracefully I handled it. That led to a meaningful conversation and a valuable connection. The Stoics teach us that self-respect comes from within, not from how others perceive us. By maintaining our dignity, we show that our sense of self-worth is unshaken by others' behavior. The next time someone dismisses you, ask yourself, what would a Stoic do? The answer is almost always to remain calm, respectful, and to keep moving forward without letting it affect your inner peace. Chapter 5. Escaping the Validation Trap. A significant pitfall that the Stoics warned against is the endless pursuit of attention and external validation. As Epictetus bluntly stated, man is disturbed not by things but by the views he takes of them. When we become attached to seeking the approval of others, we inevitably open ourselves up to suffering. The more we hinge our happiness on how others respond to us, the more we become enslaved by their opinions. Consider social media. How often do we post something and then anxiously await likes and comments? It's easy to get caught up in crafting the perfect image of ourselves to gain admiration. But this is a hollow pursuit, one that leaves us feeling empty when the attention fades or doesn't come at all. Imagine you've been messaging someone you're interested in, and suddenly they stop responding. You might find yourself checking your phone constantly, wondering what went wrong. The Stoic approach would be to step back and recognize that their response, or lack thereof, doesn't change who you are. Your value isn't dependent on whether someone texts you back or shows interest in you. Instead of seeking validation from others, focus on developing yourself. Take up hobbies that bring you joy, cultivate skills that make you feel accomplished, and build a life that you're proud of. When you derive your sense of worth from within, you're no longer at the mercy of others' opinions. A personal anecdote. I once found myself in a situation where I was seeking attention from someone I admired. I would go out of my way to be noticed, to be liked, and to receive their approval. It was exhausting, and ultimately, it didn't make me feel any better about myself. It wasn't until I started focusing on my own growth, learning new skills, pursuing my passions, that I began to feel genuinely fulfilled. The moment I stopped seeking attention was the moment I found true contentment. Chapter 6. Prioritizing Personal Growth. At the heart of Stoic philosophy is the idea that our fulfillment must come from within, not from external accomplishments or attention. Seneca eloquently stated, "He is a slave who cannot live on little." When we become overly focused on chasing romantic admiration or external validation, we enter into a form of emotional enslavement. Our well-being becomes tethered to the shifting tides of others' opinions. Instead, the Stoics encourage us to direct our focus inward, cultivating our character through virtue, wisdom, and resilience. Imagine you've recently gone through a breakup. It's tempting to seek out new romantic encounters to fill the void, to prove to yourself that you're still desirable. But this is merely a temporary fix, a distraction from the real work of healing and growth. The Stoic path would be to focus on yourself. Use this time to invest in activities that bring you joy, to strengthen your body and mind, and to nurture your relationships with friends and family. By doing so, you build a foundation of self-worth that isn't dependent on anyone else. You become whole, not because someone loves you, but because you love yourself. I remember a time after a difficult breakup when I felt the urge to jump into something new just to avoid the loneliness. But instead, I chose to focus on personal growth. I started running, took up painting, and spent more time with close friends. I found that over time, I no longer needed someone else to validate me. I had cultivated my own sense of fulfillment. The Stoics remind us that true happiness comes not from external circumstances, but from living in alignment with our values and striving for personal excellence. Focus on becoming the best version of yourself, and you will find that the opinions of others hold far less power over you. Chapter 7. Building Emotional Resilience. One of the core practices of Stoic philosophy is to remain firmly anchored in the present moment, unmoved by the turbulence of the past or anxieties about the future. Marcus Aurelius sagely advised, confine yourself to the present. When someone ignores or rejects you, it's natural for your mind to replay what happened, to analyze every word and action, and to catastrophize about what it means for your future. But the Stoics remind us that these thoughts about the past and future are often the source of our suffering. The actual event has already happened. It's our rumination that keeps the pain alive. Instead of dwelling on what went wrong, focus on what is within your control right now. How can you use this moment to grow, to learn, or to improve yourself? Imagine you've just been rejected by someone you were interested in. The initial sting is inevitable, but the Stoic response is to let go of the narrative that this rejection defines you. Take a deep breath, acknowledge your feelings without judgment, and then let them pass. This practice of staying present helps you build emotional resilience. You are not defined by any single moment or person's opinion of you. A personal experience. I once applied for a job I really wanted. I thought I had nailed the interview, but I didn't get the offer. Initially, I was crushed. I kept replaying the interview in my mind, wondering what I could have done differently. But then I remembered the Stoic teaching to focus on what is within my control and to let go of the rest. I decided to use the experience as a learning opportunity, identifying areas I could improve for future interviews. Over time, I found that my resilience grew, and I felt less and less affected by the rejection. The key is to stay focused on the present moment. It is in the present that we have power to act, to grow, and to find peace. By practicing mindfulness and letting go of past regrets or future anxieties, we cultivate a calm and steady state of mind that can weather any storm. Chapter 8. Transforming Rejection into Opportunity. The Stoics believe that every obstacle is an opportunity for growth. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This chapter will focus on how we can use rejection, not as a setback, but as a catalyst for transformation and self-improvement. When someone ignores or rejects you, the typical response might be to see it as a personal failing. But what if, instead of seeing rejection as a closed door, you viewed it as a chance to redirect your energy towards something that can truly elevate your life? Let's imagine you've been rejected after expressing your feelings to someone. The initial disappointment is natural, but what if you use that moment to assess areas in your life you'd like to grow? Maybe it's pursuing a new skill, reconnecting with friends you've lost touch with, or taking on a new physical challenge. Rejection doesn't have to define you. It can refine you. Use it as an opportunity to pivot towards something that truly benefits your development. Once I faced a tough rejection at work. It made me feel inadequate at first, but instead of wallowing in self-doubt, I used it as motivation to improve my skills. I took additional courses and eventually landed a position that was a much better fit. Sometimes life's rejections are just redirections towards something more aligned with our growth. Chapter 9. Detaching from the opinions of others. A core teaching of Stoicism is the idea of detachment from external judgments. As Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. When we attach ourselves to the opinions of others, we allow them to dictate our happiness. This chapter will help you understand how to remain steady regardless of what others think. Imagine being ignored by someone you admire. The natural impulse is to think about what you did wrong or to worry about how you're perceived. But remember, the opinions of others are beyond your control. Your sense of worth shouldn't be tied to someone else's fleeting impressions of you. Instead, cultivate a sense of inner detachment from what others think. Understand that every person has their own biases, experiences, and limitations that color their perception of you. Their opinion is not a reflection of who you are. It's simply a reflection of how they see the world. When you detach yourself from needing others' approval, you free yourself from their power over you. You become unshakable. In my personal experience, I used to be overly concerned about what my colleagues thought of me. I realized it affected my performance and my happiness. When I embraced the Stoic mindset and learned to detach, I found that not only was I more content, but I also performed better because I wasn't constantly second-guessing myself. Freedom from others' opinions is true freedom. With Chapter 10. Practicing gratitude in difficult moments. Gratitude is a powerful tool that the Stoics encouraged us to cultivate, especially during challenging times. Seneca wisely advised, "Nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart." This chapter will focus on how we can practice gratitude even when we feel ignored or rejected. It might seem counterintuitive to feel grateful when someone has dismissed or ignored you, but practicing gratitude shifts your perspective and helps you focus on the positives in your life. When someone ignores you, instead of dwelling on what you lack, think of what you have: your friends, your talents, your health, or simply the ability to learn from this experience. A personal anecdote. After being ignored by someone I was interested in, I felt pretty down. But then, I took a step back and started writing down all the things I was grateful for. It wasn't easy at first, but slowly, my mood began to lift. I realized that this person's lack of interest didn't take away from the many beautiful things in my life. Gratitude is a reminder of abundance, even when we feel lacking. Chapter 11. Building healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries are essential to maintaining self-respect and emotional well-being. The Stoics were firm believers in protecting one's peace by focusing on what is in their control and letting go of what is not. This chapter will help you understand how to build and maintain healthy boundaries. Imagine someone you're interested in keeps giving you mixed signals. One moment they're attentive, the next they're distant. It's emotionally draining, and you may find yourself constantly on edge. The Stoics teach us that we must recognize what is within our control: your actions, thoughts, and emotions. You cannot control their behavior, but you can control how much energy you invest in them. Set clear boundaries about what kind of treatment you are willing to accept. If someone repeatedly disrespects or ignores you, have the courage to walk away. Epictetus reminds us, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. By setting boundaries, you reinforce your value and ensure that your energy is directed toward people and pursuits that honor your worth. In my life, there was a person whose attention I craved, but they kept stringing me along. It was emotionally exhausting until I decided enough was enough. I set a boundary, distanced myself, and refocused my energy on people who valued me. It was liberating, and it reinforced my sense of self-worth. Boundaries are not walls, they're guardrails that protect your peace. Chapter 12. Cultivating patience with yourself. The Stoics knew that personal growth takes time. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." In this chapter, we focus on cultivating patience with yourself, especially during times when you feel ignored or dismissed. It's easy to be hard on ourselves when we don't see immediate results, whether that's in personal growth, relationships, or career. When someone ignores you, you might think, "Why am I not good enough?" Or "Why am I not over this yet?" But growth is not linear, and the Stoics teach us that we must be patient and compassionate toward ourselves. Take small, consistent steps towards improving yourself every day and understand that setbacks are part of the journey. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Be patient with your emotions and trust that, with time, you will grow stronger. I remember struggling with feelings of inadequacy after being ignored by someone I really admired. I wanted to get over it quickly, but the more I pressured myself, the worse I felt. It was only when I allowed myself the time to heal, without judgment, that I began to feel better. Patience with yourself is a form of self-love, and it's crucial for true emotional resilience. Chapter 13. Practicing self-reflection and growth. Self-reflection is a cornerstone of Stoic practice. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively in his Meditations, constantly reflecting on his actions and thoughts. In this chapter, we explore how you can use moments of rejection or being ignored as an opportunity for self-reflection and growth. Instead of focusing on why someone ignored you, ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Was there anything I could have done differently? How did I react? And is that reaction in line with the person I aspire to be? By reflecting on these questions, you turn what could have been a negative experience into a valuable lesson. This is not about blaming yourself, but about learning and improving. Each interaction is an opportunity to practice patience, kindness, and courage. A personal story. After a friend stopped responding to my messages, I felt confused and hurt. Instead of dwelling on it, I used it as an opportunity to reflect on our friendship. I realized that I had been too dependent on their attention for my happiness. This insight allowed me to work on being more self-reliant and to grow from the experience. Chapter 14. Practicing Compassion for Others. Stoicism is not just about self-improvement. It's also about cultivating compassion for others. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I'm about to criticize?" When someone ignores you, it's easy to feel resentment or anger towards them. But the Stoics teach us that we should strive to understand others. Perhaps they're dealing with their own struggles or insecurities. Maybe they didn't intend to hurt you. By approaching others with compassion, you not only reduce your own suffering, but also cultivate a deeper sense of connection and empathy. Imagine being ignored by someone you care about. Instead of jumping to conclusions or harboring resentment, consider that they might be going through something difficult. This doesn't excuse rude behavior, but it helps you respond with grace rather than bitterness. Compassion is a powerful tool for maintaining your inner peace and avoiding unnecessary conflict. Once, a close friend of mine distanced themselves without explanation. I initially felt hurt and confused, but I reminded myself that everyone has their own struggles. When we finally reconnected, they opened up about the challenges they were facing. Practicing compassion allowed me to support them rather than pushing them away. Compassion transforms relationships, both with others and with yourself. Chapter 15. Living in Alignment with Your Values. The final chapter focuses on the Stoic idea of living in alignment with your values. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." When someone ignores you, it's easy to get caught up in negative emotions and lose sight of who you are and what you stand for. Take a moment to define your core values. Is it integrity, kindness, resilience? When faced with indifference or rejection, ask yourself, how can I respond in a way that is consistent with my values? This practice helps you stay grounded and ensures that your actions come from a place of strength and authenticity rather than reactivity. Living in alignment with your values means that your worth is not determined by external events or opinions, but by your own standards. Whether someone accepts or ignores you becomes irrelevant. You are living true to yourself, and that is enough. A personal reflection. I used to compromise my values to please others, especially in romantic contexts. But the more I studied Stoicism, the more I realized that my value lies in my commitment to my principles. Now, when faced with rejection, I focus on how I can respond in a way that aligns with who I want to be. This shift has brought me a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the profound wisdom of Stoicism. I hope these insights empower you to maintain your self-respect, build genuine confidence, and focus on personal growth, even when faced with rejection or indifference. Remember, the Stoic path is one of lifelong learning, resilience, and living in alignment with your highest values. Walk on, unshaken, my friends.